Hey everybody, welcome back to the Coffeehouse Conversations podcast, and I'm your host Amos St. John. I'm so thankful that I took some time away enjoying this summer weather here in Texas with my family and friends, but I'm so glad to be back for the season 2 of my podcast. I have so much to share with you, but before I go into all that, I just want to thank all my supporters, all the people who have personally shared how this podcast has impacted their life. Some have shared with me how they've been inspired to start their own podcast and do their own thing and do something that's different. So you see, that's what I'm talking about. I did this podcast to help inspire and influence someone to be their best and do their best that they can possibly be, and possibly do. So in this season, I'm going to pivot a little bit in my direction. I know last season I was more introductory, sharing a little bit about my past and where I come from. And most of what I talked about was just more my self-awareness and just from experiences and reflected on some experiences. And, this season I feel like I'm going to be geared more towards leadership, along with some other things and great topics. But I honestly have been somewhat shying away from talking about leadership, because, I'm overcoming my own issues and dealing with my own work-related trauma and history and stuff like that. But I realize that now that I'm on the other side of the healing process, I can't run away from it or ignore it, And so I realize that I am a natural-born leader. So I enjoy leading. I enjoy motivating others to be their best selves and encouraging people to finish whatever they start. For those who follow John Maxwell, you would always hear him talk about your sweet spot. And I feel like leading and encouraging people is my sweet spot, So I remember in as a kid in Jamaica, Queens, New York, in school during recess, we used to play a game called Follow the Leader. Basically after you win a quick game of rock, paper, scissors to discover who's going to be the leader, I myself occasionally became the head of the line. So everyone else had to get in line behind me, the leader. Then they have to basically mimic all of my moves as a leader, and whoever didn't follow the directions or mimic me correctly had to get out the line. Those were the good old fun days. Anyways, when I think about leadership, I'm not just thinking about just a specific title, position, or anything. I'm looking at it from its simplest form, And I like to share 3 characteristics of a great leader. The first characteristic is that great leaders are influential. Again, great leaders are influential. Let's look at our former and my forever President Barack Obama. Out of the many things that I admired about him and his leadership, there were 3 things that stuck out: his commitment, his consistency, and his strong sense of communication. And I believe those qualities about him made him stand out and really drawn so many people across this country and even this world to follow him and believe in him. I also can say that about another great leader I just mentioned, John Maxwell. His passion and drive to influence and develop leaders all over the world really sets him apart from other great leaders. I really, really like to listen to his podcast and read his books, and he's extremely passionate and influential about his calling, his purpose, and being a leader. I'm going to jump to a second characteristic of what makes great leaders. Great leaders are impartial. I'm going to stick here a little longer. What I mean by impartial, I want to be careful on how I expound on this because many leaders have different styles of how they lead, and being partial may work for them. But for me, from my perspective, I really admire leaders who master the art of being impartial. Yes, there's an art to it. Because naturally, we all as leaders may favor one team member over the other. Like a parent, sometimes they may lean more towards one child than the other, and they may consider that being favorites, and I consider that being partial. But there's an art to not being so overtly public and obvious about what you're partial to, because I don't think it's healthy to be publicly disrespectful or destructive with it, So I've personally seen leaders use their influence and power to display partiality, to make people fear them or feel lesser than, and that really disturbed me. So you want to create an unhealthy culture in your space, start being partial. But if you want to be healthy and grow, I believe being impartial will help grow your team and create a healthy culture. Let me share 4 benefits of being impartial leader. The first benefit, I feel like an impartial leader helps create environments of fairness, equality, and respect. I've been in situations where, the person I'm working under was impartial, and that made me and the rest of the team feel so much more willing to go the extra mile, push to surpass the expectations and benchmarks and goals. And when you're in that environment, like that, things like anxiety and disorder are typically at an all-time low. You know what I mean? A second benefit of an impartial leader is that impartial leaders handle and maintain great levels of influence and power. I go deeper. I can't really go deeper into the psychological aspects of being impartial, but I'll talk about that in a later podcast. But a common denominator I've witnessed with impartial leaders and great leaders is that there are people with high emotional, mental, and psychological bandwidths. They can handle a lot. Amongst other things, I've witnessed that many of those type of leaders handle their influence and power with such a balanced perspective and maneuver through difficult moments with great strategy and stamina. A third benefit from my perspective about impartial leaders they are effective in moments of crisis. Leadership comes with many challenges, especially when you're dealing with people and their temperaments. So when situations heat up, impartial leaders are typically good with maintaining an unbiased perspective, and they really offer healthy solutions when problems arise. Let's jump to a fourth benefit. A fourth benefit, I believe, about impartial leaders is that they build healthy and vibrant cultures. When you're leading impartially, people under you can trust you, and when they can trust you, they will commit to you. And when they will commit to you, they will commit to your cause. When problems arise, people will have that confidence in knowing that the outcome of this problem will be fair and comes from a very balanced position. I really appreciate serving under and working under an impartial leader because they seem to be fair even when it doesn't benefit them. And so I do admire that about impartial and being impartial as a leader. Let's jump to the final characteristic of great leaders. I believe great leaders are also inspirational. I'm primarily a creative. I'm a musician, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, I'm a writer, I'm all that. And so I prefer to be in spaces where I can create and not be so bombarded with controlling and manipulative leadership. I believe that greatness is inspired and not manipulated. Great individuals like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates, amongst many others, are guys, I believe, who weren't manipulated, but they were inspired to do great works. And when you have great leaders like them, who've inspired so many of us around the world, they really make a huge difference. You know, how many of us can say we've been inspired by Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or even Mark Zuckerberg? You know, they're great inspirational guys that break the molds, make history, and so I really want to dig deeper into that whole inspiration versus manipulation thing. I mean, I'm reading a book from Simon Sinek, and he has a chapter in his book saying, you know, about manipulation versus inspiration, and it's very interesting, and I definitely can share a lot of parallels with that, and so we'll get more into that in later podcasts, but I really can't wait to dig deeper into my thoughts on that. And, you know, I've experienced it from both ends. You know, I've dealt with manipulative leaders and I've dealt with inspirational leaders. And I definitely saw that I excel under leaders who are more inspirational and less manipulative. So as I close this first podcast of season 2, I now believe that we understand, from my perspective, that great leaders are influential, impartial, and they are inspirational. You know, I really hope that whatever you're leading, whatever you're doing in your life, whatever you're in charge of, or whatever you're dealing with, whether it's a team from an organization or club, your family, or even yourself, use that influence. Use your influence to better this world. Be a light in the midst of darkness and make it a better place to live. You know what I mean? And just have more love and less hate. And so I'm really excited about this next season because, you know, I have a lot of great things coming up. I'm sitting here in a Coffeehouse grabbing some breakfast, and so you hear the noises and all that stuff. But, you know, just wanted to do a different environment, and just wanted to share something from this different perspective concerning leadership. So thank you again for tuning in to the Coffeehouse Conversations podcast, and I'll see you again. Thank you.